All right, how's everybody doing?
Wonderful.
First of all, how many of you here, do we have any McCain voters at all here? Okay, and do not be afraid to raise your hand because you're ballsy if you do. Good for you. I don't agree with you, but I think you're ballsy. Anybody who's undecided? Okay, so we're kind of preaching to the choir here, but you know, it's great to be in a room outside with so many undergrads, because you guys are two things that the Republicans tend not to be, particularly recently, and that is young and smart. And I'm here to encourage you to stay that way. And it's interesting. In 1968, when that generation was 18, when they were around your age, they threw their fists in the air and they urged people not to trust anyone over 30. And what happened in 1980? Those same 18-year-olds turned 30 and turned around and elected Reagan president. And what this began was an era of an attempted, almost dumbing down of America over the next 3 decades. Dan Quayle, during the following election, said, basically implied that anyone who had an education and the wisdom to question authority was part of the cultural elite. That suddenly it was a bad thing to be intelligent. Suddenly that made you someone to be disregarded. And then, of course, Bush came along in 2000, stole the election, squandered a $230 billion surplus, proclaimed himself a uniter, and then proceeded to divide us more than we have been since the Civil War. Now, I read a comment in the press, this is shortly before the Biden-Palin debate, that stated, Biden has to be careful not to appear too knowledgeable, lest he risk alienating voters. Now, when did it become a bad thing to be smart? Well, you know, just the other night, Sarah Palin referred to Joe Biden as, quote, one of those New England politicians, which is basically a thinly veiled suggestion that he is an intelligent and educated man and therefore worthy of our scorn. There's a great line from Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged, which I'm sure many of you have had to read, in which the heroine says to her childhood friend, I've always been unpopular in school, and now I've discovered the reason. They dislike me not because I do things badly, but because I do them well. They dislike me because I've always had the best grades in the class. I don't even have to study. I always get A's. Do you suppose I should try to get D's for a change and become the most popular girl in school? In response, her friend slaps her in the face. The McCain camp tends to believe, from my perspective, that voters lack intelligence, and this is obvious in the way that they try to persuade us not with facts, not with solutions or hard judgment, but with little tricks like the folksy persona that they've coached Palin to present. And you know, I tell you, she winked at the camera so many times during that debate. I was thinking, are we all going to get to make out with her afterwards? Is that what's going on? Because that would be an angry, passionate encounter. Now, for this faux folksyism, they trade in genuine, intelligent thinking. Now, I, like the majority of Americans, was very, very impressed with Barack Obama's performance at the presidential debate. In contrast to what I kept hearing from McCain, which was the repeated statement, we need to cut spending, with no real indication of how that was supposed to be accomplished. Now, Obama's critics said of him in the debate that he came off like a know-it-all. Now, I don't know about you, but I want my president to know it all. Basically the equivalent of Obama's critics calling him a nerd. Now, I do think that Americans are tired of people like George Bush and John McCain taking advantage of them financially because they think they're stupid. Americans are not stupid. I know stupid. I created Family Guy. Thanks, buddy. Increasingly, it's considered negative and almost un-American to be intelligent. If you're compassionate and open-minded, you're negatively branded a liberal. That word is deemed a negative here in the land of liberty, which was very odd to me. You hear Bill O'Reilly on a regular basis referring to those pinheads at Harvard. John McCain has his mind on other things, like making the rich richer. Like making guys like me richer, which I don't need. Thank you very much. I don't need any more money. In the 1950s, his economic policies made sense. In the 50s, if you owned the local drugstore, you owned the local grocery store in your town, you were one of the wealthy people. You were one of the rich people in town. If you owned the local laundromat, you were one of the wealthy people. It made sense to vote for economic policies like what John McCain is proposing. Nowadays, decades later, what has happened is exactly what people like Mark Twain and H.G. Wells predicted. Everything's gone like this. So you have the very, very rich controlling half the wealth, the 1%, the wealthiest people in this country controlling half the wealth. The other 99% control the other half. That's a huge imbalance, and the middle class is vanishing. And John McCain wants to give the 1% the tax break. That to me is crazy. We don't need it. We don't need it. All of us get richer under George Bush. We don't need any more of that. Now, Barack has a better idea. And by the way, this is what they call trickle-down economics, and I'm sure many of you have read about that. It started in the 80s under Reagan, and the idea is that if you give the rich a tax break, make them richer, then it'll trickle down to the rest of the economy, and everyone benefits. Now, what they aren't taking into account is the psychology of what happens when you get a lot of money. You start to get accustomed to a certain lifestyle, and you start to be extra cautious about preserving that at all costs. And it's a thing that you sort of have to fight. So that means that even if the rich get a tax break, if the rest of the economy is in the toilet, they're still going to hold on to that money because it's cold out there. So that the policy just doesn't work. Now, Barack's idea is to strengthen our economy and our country from the opposite direction. Obama will provide a tax cut to 95% of working families, invest in alternative energy sources that will create 5 million new jobs here at home, and obviously you guys have the only full-powered wind farm here right here in Ohio, which is a very big deal. Something to be very, very proud of. That is the future right there. It's economically responsible. If you by helping our environment at the same time that you're creating all these jobs, it's kind of win-win. I don't know what there is to complain about there. Everybody wins. As opposed to somebody like Sarah Palin, who is not convinced that climate change even exists. Now, I don't want to be, this is my big issue personally is the environment, because I believe that the economy it kind of takes second shrift if all your money is on fire. And I really don't want to be wearing a radiation suit to go out and get my mail because she didn't believe 99% of the scientists in this country today. Barack Obama will be an environmentally conscious and forward-moving leader. John McCain will not, and to me that's a big deal. Now there's a general feeling that George Bush won the hearts of many American voters because he was the kind of guy you want to have a beer with, or in his case, 8 beers and 9 glasses of Jack Daniels. But